let me introduce myself. My name is Miguel García. I am the Managing Director of Carbon to Nature. Carbon to Nature is a new company. We started our operations in May. So we are a really baby in this market. Regarding my background, I started my career 17 years ago, despite that I am very young, as you can see. Always working in business development, okay? After that, I spent a little bit in corporate, working in one of the, in fact, the second largest energy company in the world, Iberdrola, and the largest one in terms of green energy, in terms of renewable business. I have to tell you that I am very nervous because I am not expert. I am learning a lot. Believe me that I am trying to learn as much as we can every day to try to be at your level. That's why I didn't want to be here. Honestly, I could be more comfortable speaking from there, but I understand that as a new company in the market, we need to try to explain our model. That's why, because I am not expert, I have here, in my opinion, it's my opinion, one of the best person I have ever met here. I suppose that he will be able to introduce himself. He's the CEO of ALLCOT. ALLCOT is probably the largest developer in nature-based solutions worldwide, but for sure is the company who started some time ago, 18 years, I think that is the right number. Yeah, so I have good news and bad news. The good news is the lunch is just 30 minutes. So try to keep 30 minutes and we will have lunch. The good news is I have only 3 slides, okay? But the bad news is, sorry, we have so many questions because I am new in the market. So I have more questions than answers. And I am here to try to put those questions in your mind. And if you have time in the rest of the day and tomorrow to spend just 5 minutes with us to discuss about what we are presenting, that would be my pleasure. Because again, I am here for learning and I am here for knowing more about the market. Just one thing more. I would like to share with you one very relevant idea in my opinion. I do really think that the world is very much better today than 100 years ago. It's very much better today than 20 years ago. And will be worse today than what we have in 20 years. I am very positive about the future. So it is true that in a congress like this, we have a lot of challenge. We discuss about a lot of things that we have done not good, maybe, in the last years. But at the same time, I am really very sure that we will have in front of us a very nice future. And we will be able to develop this market together and to resolve all the problems we have. So if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Thank you, Miguel Angel. Good morning, and as Miguel Angel says, getting closer to lunch, but bear with us. So my name is Alexis Leroy. I'm the founder and CEO of a group of company called ALLCOT. We're a project developer. We believe that carbon, more than a commodity, is a formidable financial instrument to rewire not only the economy and the society. It's very significant. Even we mentioned the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement, we have 196 countries that finally agree on something 8 years ago, and we're still haggling around the Article 6, which is the money article. And what is striking, so we experience Kyoto paradigm, we experience the rise of the Sustainable Development Goals, which, by the way, were invented in 2012 by 2 Colombian ladies, and tribute to that. The Paris Agreement finally, and what we saw during the Kyoto era is that Kyoto was really a way to sell technology from the north to the south. So much so that nature-based solution was never included in none of the mechanisms that we had. We had the European ETS in 2005, we had the New Zealand as well mechanism. We had Japan, Korea. No one is taking nature-based solutions because it doesn't bring any money to the north. So I think it's very important that we acknowledge that, and we acknowledge that if we want to meet our NDCs, and they are very ambitious, you know, Europe pledged a 55% emission reduction by 2030, and even if Europe is more or less sustainable overall, there's still a lot to do, and there's no money in the world to invest into pure technology. And you know, I'd like to for those who are not following those markets, the EU ETS is flirting between 70 euros on a bad day to 100 euro on a good day. So that means that even at that level of price, it's still more interesting for corporate and industrial to invest into allowances than in nature, than in technology. So it gives us an idea of how far we can go on the price. To the green gold forest, I had a question that was a bit not. I wanted to ask you on the price, but I thought it wasn't a good idea. But you know, I'm sure the price you got is very far away from that 70 or 100 euro mark, and it doesn't consider the ecosystemic. So, you know, Miguel Angel, when you say there's a room for growth in that market, I think there's a tremendous room for growth because 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the G20. And most of those countries have, as I said, very ambitious program. We're going to need carbon credit. And although, you know, the carbon industry works in trends, so, you know, when the ICVCM came to the rescue, it was integrity. Who said we didn't have any integrity during the last 20 years? I don't know, but, you know, that was the trend. Recently, you know, it's removal. So, you know, what are we going to do with the existing forest? And who said that avoidance is not as important as removal? We need to preserve our patrimony, and biodiversity is not only a patrimony, biodiversity is life. You know, climate change is a comfortable issue. Biodiversity is a livelihood issue. And the forests that already exist are the keeper of those biodiversity, what we saw in Peru and what we're working on. So we're great enthusiasts about the carbon finance. We think we're still living a bit in a don't look up phenomena. We hope people are going to stop, you know, and that soon it will rise. And we are very curious as well on how does the industrial or the public sector or the bankers, and I understand the banks are very cautious. It's a very delicate thing, a carbon credit. Many people still can't define it. But what calls for attention is that, you know, Miguel Angel comes from Iberdrola. If I have a PPA from Iberdrola, I'm sure I'm going to get 70 to 80% finance, no question asked. If I have a ERPA, which is a technical agreement for emission reduction purchase and sell agreement, you know, I probably am going to need to invite the same banker for lunch. So we really need to work on why is that is. And for a project to take place, you know, it's a very singular thing that we saw with the green gold forest. It requires a lot of capital. ALLCOT is a different breed because that's all we do. So we're expert in that field, and we could benefit from a frenzy of trading and financing our own project. And now we have 163 projects in the world at various stages. Many of them are on hold for lack of capital. But we had the good fortune of meeting with newcomers in the industry that want to do good and want to do good ethically. Projects that are transparent, projects that have the community at the heart of those projects, because, you know, at the end of the day, a project developer is only an habilitator for projects. These are not our project, and they certainly are not the project of the investor. They are the community's project. So what we need to do is structure, create a strong governance, and work on reforestation, conservation, restoration. But there's also all the opportunity of agricultural impact project, and we should be able to do that without suffering the trend of, you know, general press and lack of knowledge. So get back to you for your presentation, and happy to go on.
Yes, thank you so much. So yes, if you can move forward. As I said before, we have only 3 slides. The first of one, I think that it is very relevant, the starting point. I would like to just spend 5 minutes about how big is nature in our world economy. And that is a fact. That is number. That is not an opinion. We can discuss a lot about how the human is impacting the environmental. But here you have some numbers. For example, the 55% of our GDP is coming directly or indirectly from GDP. For example, our company, Iberdrola, is producing green energy, is using wind and is using sun. And our business is completely linked with the nature. So, but if you see, last year, only 2.8% of the GDP was invested on nature. Can you imagine that? Imagine other business like timber, for example. The timber companies are investing in forest, but the energy company, and I am putting my company as an example, we are not investing, we are not moving money back to nature. Despite that, there are a lot of positive benefits on investing in nature. You can manage better your risk. You can create intangible value of your assets. And I would like to spend just 3 minutes at the end of the presentation about discussing a little bit about intangible assets. And we need to think a little bit more about how our profit is linked with nature, because that is what we are discussing about. The title of this Congress is Investing in Forest and Biodiversity, but you cannot discuss about investing without profit. So we need to discuss about profit, where the profit is coming from. Because if we don't have profit, we will not have investment. For example, let me ask you something. How many people here, how many of you have invested $1 million in nature in the last year? Not you, but your companies. Okay, not bad. Maybe 40%, 50% of the people. How many of you spent 2 weeks in the middle of the Amazonia or in the middle of the nature? Okay, not bad. But imagine the same question in a Congress about investing in a stock market or investing in currency, crypto currency, for example. So, and if you don't trust on the power of nature, let me put another example about forest global market. Forest market is one of the most profitable market in the last 30 years. Again, those are numbers. Last year, the average yield of investing in forest was 9.2%. 8.1 if you consider the 30 last years. But if you analyze the net book value of those assets, analyzing the balance of the public companies who are listed in the stock market, you can conclude that 116% of the increase of the value of those net book value. So that is really impressive numbers, but nobody is talking about that. So I think that that's why we need to. Carbon credits is, of course, interesting and is the tool that we have today for moving funds to our projects. But I think that we need to think beyond carbon credits and to try to explain to our investors why investing in nature-based solutions is profitable. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so here what we are trying to discuss, and here we can share with you our thoughts, is how local communities engagement is important and how moving ideas from a global market to a local market is relevant. Okay, so I think that we need to develop some strategies, and we are very fortunate in Carbon to Nature because we are already sharing 3 projects with ALLCOT in Colombia and Mexico, And we have learned very quickly from them about that. So maybe you can explain a little bit more about how engagement the communities is key.
As I mentioned before, the cornerstone for us when it comes to nature base are the community. If you're dealing with a conservation project, it's pretty obvious why. But even if you're dealing with a reforestation project, although the main efforts are done at the beginning by the investor, well, the livelihood and the success of whatever you're planting depend on the commitment of the community and the understanding of the community that ultimately this plantation is going to be a center of wealth and production for them. So we've been working traditionally ALLCOT allies with local NGO because we don't have the time to build a very, those projects requires a very robust social governance and commitment. Again, taking the example of our friend from Peru, they started in 2008 as a timber or, company. The relationship with the community, I think, is paramount on ensuring that a project, removal or avoidance, is successful. So the starting point that we have, and you experience that in Santa Maria, is working with people who understand the stakeholder and make sure that you invest enough time for the community to understand how and what is the project. And that's not just with the community leaders, it needs to be done with everybody. So that's, for ALLCOT has been the recipe of success and making sure that the community own their project. We have varieties of projects, some with indigenous community. Indigenous community usually have a cosmovision, so that means that everything is sacred and everything is linked. So there's not so much problem on the deforestation aspect. It's more a question of how do we bring resource to make sure that their culture can remain, that the young don't go to the city and that they have enough financial incentive to preserve that culture and that ecosystem. We also have project in conflict zone in Colombia, which is a very difficult area in the Sur de Meta, for those who knows Colombia. This was the heart of the FARC. We managed to get 1,200 families together who are now stewards of the forest because through carbon, it makes more sense for them to conserve, and now we're starting a phase of restoration than planting coca or doing illegal mining or other type of activities. And I think that in the nature-based solution, that's what needs to be put forward. And for this to work, we also need to work on new mechanisms. So everybody was attacking REDD. I think REDD has been a very large contribution because there's no other global mechanism that really fought for conservation, and that's since the summit of Rio, in '92, we're still talking about it, nothing happened. So, we have to give REDD the tribute it deserves. It's imperfect, of course it's imperfect, but it's a new industry. So what we need to do is work together on how do we make this thing better. And it's true for everything related to carbon. Carbon is under a lot of attack in general, but it's the cornerstone of the Paris Agreement. We already have legislation. We're reminded like the carbon border adjustment. We have other legislation that are carbon index. There's a series of carbon tax coming in Chile, in Mexico, in Colombia, and others. And carbon is here to stay whether we like it or not. So really, we should join force in improving the carbon. And what carbon does need is transparency and simplification. If a company wants to buy carbon credit, it's very difficult. And if somebody wants to buy a carbon credit of quality, it's even more difficult because how do you define quality? And we are very subjective because we are not transparent. So we're a great advocate of transparency in carbon, even disclosing margin. Companies like ALLCOT are working in methodology which are going to disclose where is the money going, even the investor money, how does it translate into SDG, how does the money translate into sustainable impact through the lens of the 2030 agenda tool. And I think, and I hope, that should unlock the capital and build trust and confidence.
Yes, okay, thank you. So, uh, 13 minutes only from lunch, so we are almost there. One point at the beginning, the importance of nature in our economy. Second, this global market with a local approach. That is the second idea that I would like to put in your mind. And the third one, and if you've moved to the last slide, in my opinion, is the most relevant discussion that I would like to have with you in this Congress, the intangible value of our assets, okay? This morning I heard someone saying, we need to create tangible assets from biodiversity. I disagree. I think that what we need to do is creating value from intangible assets, because that's real. The top 10 companies in the world today are declaring in the balance sheet more than $10 billion of intangible assets. Apple, for example, 4 billion. No one is going to Apple asking, hey, where those 4 billion are coming from? No, because they are strong and the market is believing in that intangible asset. Why we need to explain every single year about biodiversity, about natural capital, about our forest is having an intangible value? Why? And another thing for discussion linked with this is about GDP. Everybody is in agreement that I don't know, something between 40, 50, I said at the beginning 55, according with the World Economic Forum, of our GDP is coming from nature. But in the calculations of the GDP of our countries, we are not including anything about natural capital. Can you imagine Brazil, for example? I had a discussion with someone coming from the embassy of Brazil. Can you imagine if Brazil could put in the GDP the value of the Amazonia? Because it is clear, and I am sure that everybody is in agreement with me, that the Amazonia has intangible value, very critical. I don't know if 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, but something. And we are working in a sector, we are working investing a lot of money. My company, for example, sorry, the company where I work for, 6.2 million this year. And we're investing money in something that we cannot explain how the intangible value is working. But the board of directors of Apple, and I am sorry, Apple or any other company, Iberdrola, my company, they don't need to explain where the intangible assets of Iberdrola are coming from. It's crazy. So it is true that one way of working, in my opinion, the opinion of someone who started to work in this market 5 months ago, so believe me that I am just putting this for discussion, but one idea is true that maybe we can explore how biodiversity could be tangible, but I think that another alternative in parallel is trying to create intangible value measure of our assets. Because it's clear that our assets, our forest, our nature is providing a lot of intangible assets. So that could be the last reflection. I would like to put the video of Ousmane, because another thing that is, we are discussing about natural capital, and 60% of the natural capital is coming from Africa, and we don't have anyone from Africa here.
Maybe I can introduce Ousmane
Yes,
quickly to
please.
the. Okay, so we unfortunately, our friend Ousmane Falsar, who is the coordinator of the West African Alliance. The West African Alliance is a group of 16 countries out of 25. They are a bloc that negotiates jointly at COP. And he was supposed to come with us today. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get him the visa. But I was with him until the day before yesterday at the first West African Alliance Carbon Forum. So Africa is moving in that direction, and they put a number forward that was quite striking. Africa, to the date, only account for 2.5% of the voluntary carbon market. 2.5%. And Africa, account for more than 70% of all commodities that are being exported worldwide. And Usman video enhanced the fact that Africa is one of the richest nations when it comes to nature-based solution and ecosystemic projects. So that's reinforce what I was saying originally, is that carbon really are an impact finance tool, and it needs to be used, and we need to have high quality projects to be able to shift money to the places where they are dearly needed. And you mentioned intangible. I think that what we've learned during all those years of project is we know how to do a baseline, and we know how to do that very well. And with technology, projects should be able to create biodiversity baseline and biodiversity and social baseline. And that is what should define, that's what is needed to define a high price value. It's not just a Turkish bazaar approach, but we should be able to build price from the bottom up on what is needed to maintain that whole ecosystem from an environmental, biodiversity, and social point of view.
Hi everybody, I'm Usman Palsar. I'm the coordinator of the West African Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance. And I'm here today to share with you our personal views on nature-based solution that can be used beyond carbon markets. From West African point of view, considering the fact that in West Africa, we have one of the most important forests in the world. I think with the Guinea basin, we have the third largest forest in the world. And when it comes to nature assets or nature capital, we think that in West Africa we have one of the most important potential that is now being strengthened by many drivers in terms of deforestation and in terms of biodiversity modification. So we do think in the current situation where climate change is now becoming one of the most important threats for humanity, we need to take good care of this kind of natural assets that we have in West Africa, or that we have in Africa in general. Because we have the Congo Basin, we have also the basin in West Africa where we have a lot of potential. To me, I think by giving additional value beyond carbon, we will have a possibility to better protect our forests and to better maintain the biodiversity that we have in this existing forest. And to be able to achieve this goal, I think we need to put a value on ecosystemic services that we are getting from this forest, and also to see how best we can evaluate, we can assess and monetize the biodiversity that we can preserve in our forests. Because by doing that, we will give the opportunity to the local communities to get more revenue that will incentivize them to better protect this tremendous resource that we have in our region. So that's why we think developing methodologies, giving opportunities to put a value on ecosystemic services, biodiversity preservation will help a lot to increase the level of preservation of this kind of resource we have in our region. And I think we as West African Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance, we are doing our best to build the capacities for local communities, to raise awareness, to let them know about the existing potential that we have in this kind of nature-based solutions. And the implementation of this type of projects could help a lot in adding more value in our conservation project that we are implementing in order to have some carbon credit, but also to have additional resources that can incentivize the preservation of the biodiversity of our forests.
Okay, so we are just on time. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Alexis, for having here with me. I am more quiet now. Thank you for passing me your positivity and your energy. And if someone has any question, just last comment, Carbon to Nature is a baby company, so that means that we are hiding. We need people, we need passionate people like us, so if you want to discuss with me further after, I could be more than happy to that. So if someone has any question? Okay, so that means that we can go for lunch.